You deserve a prison cell, not City Hall." That explosive accusation detonated on the debate stage, unleashing the fiercest political war New York City has ever seen. Andrew Cuomo, clawing for a comeback after crippling scandals, is slammed with relentless charges of corruption by Nicole Malliotakis. A ferocious Republican firebrand, their savage showdown shatters the city, plunging voters into a vicious maelstrom of betrayal, rage, and division. As New Yorkers are forced to pick sides in this toxic feud, fury erupts, threatening to tear America's greatest city apart. Buckle up, because tonight, we're plunging into a ruthless clash with no victors, only raw conflict and a city screaming for salvation. Nicole Malliotakis stood firmly behind her podium, eyes locked fiercely onto Andrew Cuomo across the brightly lit debate stage. The tension inside the packed auditorium felt electric, thick enough to slice. Cameras flashed, capturing every nuanced expression from the two political rivals who had turned this mayoral race into one of New York City's most explosive political battles in recent history. The debate moderator leaned into the microphone and said clearly, "Ms. Malliotakis, your response." She drew a sharp breath, measuring her words carefully. Then, pointing a finger directly at Cuomo, she unleashed a statement that immediately sent shockwaves through the hall. "You belong in a courtroom. Mr. Cuomo, not City Hall." Gasps filled the air. Cheers and jeers collided, echoing sharply around the room. Cuomo's face tightened briefly before reverting to its carefully constructed calm, a mask perfected by decades in politics. Within moments, the clip of Malliotakis' incendiary remark was trending online. Social media erupted. Hashtags battled on Twitter. Cuomo out again faced off against hashtag Nicole Too Far, turning digital spaces into ideological battlegrounds overnight. Andrew Cuomo had never intended for his comeback to be peaceful, just months earlier. After fading quietly into political exile amid scandals and accusations, he had returned to the public eye with calculated humility. Now, here he stood, not merely as a candidate, but as a symbol of redemption, or perhaps, as some critics suggested, a haunting reminder of New York's most troubling recent history. In the opposite corner stood Nicole Malliotakis, daughter of Greek and Cuban immigrants, a proud Staten Island Republican, and a staunch defender of conservative values. She represented not only an opposing political party, but a fundamental ideological divide. Her very candidacy challenged the liberal orthodoxy Cuomo once championed. The moderator interjected firmly, regaining control of the debate. "Governor Cuomo, your response to Ms. Malliotakis." Cuomo leaned slowly toward his microphone, a confident smirk curling slightly at the edge of his mouth. "Ms. Malliotakis enjoys theatrics," he began calmly, his voice practiced and measured. "But theatrics won't help us solve New York City's real problems. While she's busy attacking me, she offers nothing but empty slogans. The city deserves better." Nicole's eyes flashed defiantly. The crowd murmured, sensing another clash brewing beneath the carefully scripted debate format. But Cuomo didn't stop there. He leaned further forward, gaze penetrating. "Unlike my opponent, I've acknowledged my mistakes publicly." Cuomo continued, his tone grave yet persuasive. "I have learned. I have grown. I returned because the city I love deserves experienced leadership, not amateur dramatics." His supporters erupted into applause, but Nicole quickly fired back, unfazed. "Experienced leadership?" She laughed bitterly, sarcasm dripping from every syllable. "Governor, your experience includes a record number of nursing home deaths during COVID, covered up conveniently until forced to admit wrongdoing. New York City needs change, not more scandals." The debate moderator, visibly tense, attempted to steer the conversation away from personal jabs, but the damage was done. Clips of their heated exchange spread rapidly across news outlets nationwide, dissected meticulously by pundits and bloggers alike. Each soundbite served as ammunition for a larger ideological war raging far beyond the walls of the auditorium. In homes across the city, viewers watched in divided fascination. Cuomo's loyalists praised his resilience, claiming the former governor had learned humility through adversity. Critics, however, blasted his return as arrogant and tone-deaf, a cynical attempt at rewriting a tarnished legacy. On the opposite side, Malliotakis' base surged with enthusiasm. Her bluntness, initially dismissed as mere political showmanship, had transformed her into a rising star among conservatives weary of Cuomo's storied past. Yet detractors warned she embodied dangerous rhetoric. Exploiting division rather than seeking unity, the city itself mirrored this divide, becoming a microcosm of broader national tensions between Democrats and Republicans. Neighborhood coffee shops turned into arenas for political arguments. Family dinners descended into heated debates. New York was no longer simply choosing a mayor, it was wrestling with its soul. Nicole stepped off stage that night feeling vindicated yet uneasy. She had expected pushback, but perhaps underestimated just how profoundly personal and bitter this contest would become. Andrew Cuomo, ever the political chess master, disappeared behind stage curtains with characteristic composure, privately calculating his next move. Meanwhile, outside the debate hall, reporters scrambled for reaction from attendees. One elderly man shook his head gravely, saying quietly into the microphone, "They've turned our city into a spectacle. We deserve leaders, not gladiators." And a young woman standing nearby disagreed vehemently. "No, we deserve honesty. If it takes a battle like this to get truth, so be it." The streets hummed with chatter, the debate's echoes reverberating through subway cars and late-night diners. Social media streams filled with live reactions, some users praising Malliotakis' courage, others lamenting Cuomo's return, branding it an insult to victims of his past misdeeds. This mayoral race had, almost overnight, transformed from a mere political contest into an explosive referendum on accountability, redemption, and identity. New York City had become ground zero for a question haunting American politics everywhere. Can a fallen leader truly redeem himself, or should some doors remain forever closed in the following days? News cycles relentlessly dissected the explosive debate moment. Media outlets lined up political analysts and commentators, each eagerly offering their hot takes. Headlines splashed across newspapers declared New York City a city divided, while talk radio hosts shouted their opinions into microphones, fueling an already blazing fire. Andrew Cuomo remained cautious. He had carefully constructed his political revival, fully aware of his controversial past. For Cuomo, humility was no longer just a posture, it was a strategy. He appeared on carefully selected media platforms, speaking softly but deliberately, positioning himself as the wiser, seasoned choice. "I've made errors," Cuomo admitted candidly during a widely watched television interview, the sincerity in his voice carefully calibrated. "But who among us hasn't stumbled? The question isn't whether I've fallen, it's how I've risen again." Yet, Nicole Malliotakis refused to back down, sharpening her message at every public appearance. She branded Cuomo's carefully scripted humility as little more than political theater. New Yorkers deserve better than second chances handed out to corrupt politicians, she declared at a rally on Staten Island. Her voice resonated powerfully, fueled by authentic anger. "We don't need apologies. We need action, accountability, and yes, justice." Public opinion polls painted a chaotic picture. Cuomo maintained a narrow lead, buoyed by loyal Democratic voters who saw in him stability, experience, and competence, even if imperfect. Malliotakis, meanwhile, surged ahead in pockets traditionally skeptical of progressive policies, particularly among working-class neighborhoods wary of Cuomo's promises and history. The city's streets, coffee shops, and public transit echoed with conversations about the candidates, often boiling over into heated arguments. Friends and families argued passionately, some relationships fracturing along the fault lines of this bitter electoral conflict. New York's social fabric seemed dangerously frayed. Then, just as tensions reached fever pitch, a dramatic development further rocked the race. An anonymous insider leaked a private recording of Andrew Cuomo, a soundbite so incendiary, it nearly derailed his entire campaign overnight. In the audio, Cuomo's voice unmistakably calm, yet dripping with disdain, commented on Malliotakis in terms many found shocking. "She's nothing but DeSantis in a pencil skirt, just as dangerous, but far less clever," Cuomo's voice said with casual contempt. The recording exploded across the internet, sparking immediate outrage. Critics pounced, branding Cuomo sexist and dismissive. Feminist groups swiftly condemned his remarks as indicative of broader, systemic misogyny within the political establishment. Nicole Malliotakis, meanwhile, responded swiftly and decisively. Standing outside City Hall, she delivered a blistering statement directly to assembled cameras and reporters. "This is precisely the problem with Andrew Cuomo," Malliotakis proclaimed, voice filled with righteous anger. "He dismisses women who challenge him. He mocks anyone who dares hold him accountable. If Cuomo can't respect the women of New York City, how can he possibly lead them?" Social media erupted once more. Cuomo's allies desperately attempted damage control, characterizing his comments as an unfortunate joke made in poor taste. But the backlash was fierce and unrelenting. A new hashtag #CuomoMisogynyGate, rapidly gained traction, even among younger Democrats now deeply troubled by Cuomo's behavior. Yet, just as Malliotakis appeared poised to deliver the knockout blow, a second controversy erupted, this time targeting her campaign. News outlets suddenly reported on a troubling financial connection. Documents emerged suggesting that a major conservative nonprofit previously accused of campaign finance violations had donated significant sums to Malliotakis' mayoral bid. Opponents immediately seized upon the revelation. Cuomo's team swiftly shifted gears, going from defense to offense overnight. A Cuomo campaign spokesperson publicly accused Malliotakis of accepting tainted money from extremist groups intent on corrupting New York City's politics. Caught momentarily off guard, Malliotakis vehemently denied any wrongdoing, labeling the accusations as fabricated nonsense. Within days, independent investigations uncovered an even more startling twist. The documents implicating Malliotakis had been intentionally leaked from sources tied directly to Cuomo's own campaign staff. Cuomo immediately distanced himself from the operation, but public suspicion lingered. Malliotakis capitalized quickly, casting herself as a victim of Cuomo's political gamesmanship. "This is exactly how Andrew Cuomo operates," she stated emphatically during a packed press conference in Brooklyn. "Smears, deception, and underhanded tactics. He believes rules don't apply to him. He thinks he can manipulate and bully his way back into power." The city plunged deeper into political turmoil. Voters watched helplessly as their choice for mayor devolved into bitter accusations, manipulated leaks, and personal attacks. Discussions became less about policy and more about character assassination. Leaving many disillusioned and exhausted, New York City's mayoral election had become a referendum not just on leadership or policy, but on the nature of truth itself. Trust eroded further, replaced by cynicism and frustration, a week before Election Day. The two candidates faced off once more in a nationally televised debate, this time with even greater scrutiny. Tensions simmered visibly between Cuomo and Malliotakis, their mutual animosity impossible to hide beneath polished veneers. Cuomo spoke first, again emphasizing his resilience and hard-earned wisdom. "Leadership requires courage to admit your mistakes," he said, voice resonating. "I've done that. I'm ready to rebuild trust. Ms. Malliotakis continues to divide and inflame." Malliotakis refused to soften her stance. "Real leadership," she shot back sharply, "means never having to apologize for betrayal of the public trust in the first place." As the cameras rolled, millions of viewers nationwide held their breath, fully aware they were witnessing not just a mayoral debate, but a battle for the soul of a city increasingly uncertain of its future. The lights dimmed slightly in the auditorium, casting long shadows across the stage. Cuomo and Malliotakis stood at their podiums, shoulders rigid, eyes narrowed, both acutely aware that this debate would either restore or dismantle their public credibility once and for all. The moderator cleared her throat, injecting calm authority into the tense atmosphere. "Let's shift our discussion toward the city's economy. Governor Cuomo, how do you plan to address the city's budget crisis?" Cuomo adjusted his tie subtly, projecting a well-practiced composure. "New York City needs stability." Cuomo began. "Stability means investing strategically. I propose targeted spending improving infrastructure, healthcare, and education. Yes, higher taxes on the wealthy are essential. Those who've prospered most must contribute fairly to our city's recovery." Malliotakis didn't wait for her turn, interrupting swiftly, eyes blazing with determination. "That's exactly the problem. Governor, your strategic spending is just code for higher taxes, and we all know it. You think punishing success will heal the city. It won't. It'll drive jobs and talent away, further crippling our economy." The moderator tried to intervene, but Malliotakis continued sharply, addressing Cuomo directly now, almost disregarding the camera's gaze. You talk about stability, but under your leadership, thousands of small businesses closed permanently. Under your watch, the middle class was forgotten, struggling families abandoned. Cuomo bristled visibly, interrupting her with controlled irritation. My opponent oversimplifies reality, he stated firmly. Every major city faced unprecedented challenges these past years. Leadership means making difficult decisions. I acknowledge we didn't get everything right, but we saved lives. We protected communities. Malliotakis leaned forward, voice sharper still. Protected communities. Ask the residents of Brooklyn and Queens if they felt protected when violent crime surged under your watch. Ask the mothers afraid to send their children outside to play. The audience stirred, murmurs rippling through the hall. Cuomo raised his voice slightly, maintaining careful control. This isn't about fear-mongering, Miss Malliotakis. It's about solutions. What concrete solutions do you offer aside from tearing down the progress we've already made? Malliotakis straightened her posture, her voice crisp and unyielding. My solution is clear restore law and order, increase funding to the NYPD, support community policing, and restore faith in public safety. These aren't slogans, they're actionable plans. Plans you oppose because they conflict with your failed progressive experiment. The room buzzed intensely, tension almost tangible. Social media channels exploded again, viewers fiercely debating every word, each camp further entrenched in their positions, just as the debate seemed poised to spiral into deeper conflict. The moderator skillfully redirected, let's move to immigration policy, a critical issue for New Yorkers. Ms. Malliotakis, your critics accuse you of being anti-immigrant. How do you respond? Nicole's eyes flashed indignantly, her reply immediate and fiery. I am the proud daughter of immigrants. My family knows firsthand the importance of legal immigration. What I oppose is chaos and open borders disguised as compassion. Cuomo's policies have made our city vulnerable to drug trafficking, human trafficking. Protecting our citizens means enforcing laws fairly, compassionately, but firmly. Cuomo interjected with measured sarcasm, his voice cool. Interesting how Ms. Malliotakis' immigrant roots suddenly matter now. He remarked pointedly, yet she aligns herself with the very same party pushing policies that demonize and scapegoat immigrants daily. Nicole's response was immediate, emotion charging every word. That's a disgraceful misrepresentation. My fight isn't against immigrants, it's against lawlessness and exploitation. Governor Cuomo, your empty accusations won't erase your own failures in protecting vulnerable communities from violence and exploitation. The audience leaned forward, captivated, sensing they were watching a pivotal moment in New York City's recent history. Both candidates were now visibly emotional, the veneer of professional composure slipping away, replaced by raw authenticity, just as tension reached its peak. Cuomo pivoted dramatically, turning directly to the audience, his voice lower, deeper, almost pleading. Look at us. Look at what's happened here tonight, he said, gesturing between himself and Malliotakis. We're better than this. Our city is hurting, divided. We can't move forward if we keep tearing each other apart. Nicole watched, skeptically, waiting for the calculated catch she knew would inevitably come. Ms. Malliotakis offers you anger, outrage, but no real solutions. Cuomo continued earnestly. I offer experience. Imperfect. Yes, but tested. If you grant me this chance, I promise I will heal, not divide. Malliotakis quickly countered, voice steady but firm. Heal, Governor Cuomo. The wounds you're trying to heal were inflicted by your own hand. Leadership isn't about making pretty speeches or emotional pleas. It's about accountability. It's about integrity. And most importantly, it's about the truth. The debate concluded amid deafening applause mixed equally with jeers. Neither candidate had won decisively, and neither had conceded an inch. If anything, divisions only grew deeper. Outside the auditorium, citizens passionately argued over who emerged victorious. Reporters struggled to capture the varied reactions from attendees exiting into the cool night air. One young man, clearly exasperated, spoke into a journalist's microphone. We're tired of choosing between bad and worse. When will we get real leadership again? A woman next to him disagreed sharply, her voice strong, unwavering. Cuomo's done enough harm, she stated firmly. We need someone who's willing to fight someone like Nicole Malliotakis. That night, New York City slept uneasily, aware its future hung precariously between two fundamentally opposed visions. Cuomo, representing redemption through experience, and Malliotakis, embodying uncompromising change, left New Yorkers deeply conflicted, each citizen forced to choose sides in a battle far bigger than a single election. In the aftermath of the explosive debate, New York City's political landscape remained unsettled. Opinion polls showed a sharply divided electorate, each candidate locked into a dead heat. Local news anchors described the city as teetering on a knife's edge. The outcome of the mayoral race now impossible to predict. Both Cuomo and Malliotakis launched into the final phase of their campaigns aggressively. Cuomo toured community centers and local businesses, carefully selecting venues where he still retained substantial support. He spoke softly but firmly, attempting to reassure undecided voters with a message of unity and competence. New York needs leadership that understands the complexity of running a city. Cuomo explained to an attentive group of senior citizens gathered in a Queens community hall. I've managed crises before. I have navigated the storms. I can steer this city toward recovery. Across town, Nicole Malliotakis took an entirely different approach. At crowded rallies held in neighborhoods traditionally ignored by mainstream Democratic politicians, her fiery rhetoric resonated deeply. Her voice carried both anger and determination, echoing through halls packed with passionate supporters. Governor Cuomo believes he's entitled to this job, she shouted defiantly to a raucous Brooklyn crowd. But the people of New York know better. We won't forget the damage he's done. We won't ignore the corruption. Our city deserves more than recycled politicians who failed us once already. Yet, even as both campaigns surged forward, new developments emerged, complicating matters further. The New York Times ran a blistering investigative piece detailing Cuomo's connections to influential real estate developers, highlighting past favors allegedly exchanged during his governorship. Headlines questioned whether Cuomo's supposed redemption was merely another calculated political maneuver, seizing the moment. Malliotakis immediately condemned Cuomo, accusing him of perpetuating the very corruption that had tainted his governorship. Her team swiftly released an aggressive online campaign ad, linking Cuomo directly to past scandals. Using stark visuals paired with a chilling narration, how many times can we let Andrew Cuomo betray our trust? How many chances does one man deserve? But Cuomo, ever resilient, countered quickly at a hastily called press conference, flanked by prominent local community leaders. He delivered a strongly worded denial, dismissing the accusations as partisan attacks intended to mislead voters. The citizens of New York are tired of negativity and smear tactics, Cuomo declared emphatically. They want solutions. They need someone with the courage to lead, not someone obsessed with personal attacks. Social media erupted into another frenzy, hashtags battling fiercely for dominance, hashtag corrupt Cuomo versus hashtag Nicole. Is extreme. Citizens argued bitterly, each side growing more entrenched. Families became divided along ideological lines. Workplaces tense with suppressed arguments. Friends drifting apart over political differences now impossible to ignore, amidst the chaos. A significant televised interview further fueled controversy. Nationally prominent conservative commentator Tucker Carlson invited Nicole Malliotakis onto his program, framing her as a fearless defender of traditional values battling against corrupt establishment elites. During the interview, Carlson leaned forward, his question blunt. Ms. Malliotakis, is Andrew Cuomo fundamentally corrupt? Without hesitation, Malliotakis looked directly into the camera and replied clearly, absolutely. Cuomo's entire career is defined by corruption, cover-ups, and manipulation. This election is our last chance to restore integrity to New York City. Carlson nodded approvingly, clearly satisfied, but the interview ignited intense debate nationwide. Liberal pundits attacked Malliotakis for perpetuating toxic political division, accusing her of irresponsible rhetoric. Cuomo's supporters demanded apologies, branding her statements reckless and divisive. But conservatives rallied passionately around Malliotakis, praising her candid honesty. Social media clips from the interview spread rapidly, fueling intense debates across every corner of the internet. Cuomo responded strategically, appearing on multiple progressive media outlets. He portrayed himself as a victim of coordinated character assassination. "I have become a convenient villain for the far right," Cuomo told one sympathetic interviewer. "They fear my experience. They know I will unite, not divide, so they resort to lies and exaggerations." Still, Cuomo's careful words weren't enough to ease growing anxieties among voters. New Yorkers felt trapped between two polarizing options: Cuomo's compromised history, or Malliotakis's provocative rhetoric, days before the election. The city was gripped by an unusual tension. Street corners featured vocal demonstrations from both sides. Supporters exchanged heated words beneath campaign banners, signs thrust aggressively into the air. Strangers debated fiercely on subway cars, the city's famed diversity now overshadowed by deep political hostility, in a televised appearance intended to calm tensions. New York State Attorney General Letitia James delivered remarks urging voters to remain peaceful and respectful. She avoided direct endorsement, but her subtle warnings against electing candidates who embodied past failures or dangerous extremism were interpreted as coded criticisms of both Cuomo and Malliotakis. Her words did little to settle public anxiety. New Yorkers seemed paralyzed by uncertainty, trapped between two deeply flawed visions of their future. The city, once known for resilience and unity, now struggled beneath the weight of profound internal divisions. In Staten Island, Malliotakis' home turf, voters expressed cautious optimism. Many considered this their best chance in decades to finally install a conservative voice in City Hall. Yet, even among her staunch supporters, concerns lingered. Some privately worried her uncompromising style could further fracture an already divided city. Meanwhile, Cuomo's supporters faced their own internal dilemmas. Progressive voters openly debated whether backing Cuomo was ethically justified. Could they support someone with such a troubled past, simply to prevent a conservative victory? The once simple act of casting a ballot had become emotionally charged, fraught with anxiety and bitterness. Citizens questioned their loyalties, reconsidered lifelong beliefs, and struggled deeply with personal values, clashing against pragmatic concerns. With the election mere days away, New York City felt poised on the brink of historic transformation or potential disaster. The two candidates represented starkly contrasting visions, each carrying heavy burdens of controversy and unanswered questions. Voters would soon decide whether Cuomo's complicated past was forgivable or if Malliotakis' uncompromising approach truly represented a safer, more honest alternative. As Election Day loomed closer, New York remained frozen in uncertainty, desperately seeking clarity amid relentless noise. In the final hours before Election Day, an uneasy stillness settled over New York City. Campaign advertisements ceased. The city's frenetic energy, which had peaked in recent weeks, gave way to tense anticipation. Voters woke up on election morning with the feeling of walking toward a verdict, not merely choosing a mayor, but determining the very character of their city. At polling stations across all 5 boroughs, lines stretched around blocks. Citizens waited quietly, exchanging brief, uneasy glances. Most avoided political discussion, painfully aware that even simple conversations could ignite heated confrontations. Media outlets covered voting precincts live, capturing snapshots of New Yorkers queuing patiently. One elderly man, wearing a worn Mets baseball cap, summed up the prevailing sentiment succinctly to a reporter. "I've voted here my whole life," he said softly, "but I don't think I've ever been more unsure of what the right choice is." Nearby, a young mother echoed his sentiment, cradling her child gently. "I'm worried," she admitted. "Both candidates scare me in different ways, but staying home feels worse." As the day unfolded, both campaigns projected confidence. Cuomo voted early in his home precinct, greeting supporters warmly but avoiding reporters. Malliotakis cast her ballot in Staten Island, smiling optimistically, promising to fight until the final moment. Yet, beneath these outward displays, both campaigns were riddled with private anxieties. Polls had narrowed so tightly that campaign staff openly admitted behind closed doors they had no reliable prediction for the night's outcome. As polls closed in the early evening, television networks immediately launched into special election coverage. Analysts speculated feverishly, scrolling through preliminary returns, dissecting exit polls, and grasping desperately for signs of clarity. Early results showed Cuomo leading slightly in Manhattan and Brooklyn, while Malliotakis secured a clear advantage in Staten Island and Queens. The Bronx remained contested, each precinct flipping narrowly between candidates, fueling anxiety among observers on both sides. By late evening, it became painfully apparent the election was too close to call. News anchors visibly struggled with frustration, reading updated results only to announce repeatedly that the margin remained razor-thin. At Cuomo's campaign headquarters, supporters gathered nervously. Their initial confidence faded, replaced by uncertainty as screens displayed fluctuating vote tallies. Cuomo appeared briefly, urging patience, his voice steady but eyes revealing private apprehension. "Tonight, democracy is speaking," Cuomo announced cautiously. "Whatever the outcome, we'll respect the decision. Our city has always been bigger than any one candidate." Across town, at Malliotakis' rally, the mood was equally tense. Crowds waited restlessly, checking phones and whispering nervously. When Malliotakis took the stage, she projected determined optimism. Despite the uncertainty gripping her campaign, "We've fought for the soul of this city," she declared passionately. "And regardless of what happens tonight, we've already sent a powerful message. New Yorkers refuse to accept corruption. We demand integrity, honesty, and leadership that respects every citizen." The evening stretched late into the night, and still, no clear winner emerged. The city's election officials reported the count was so close that recounts would inevitably be required. Both candidates retreated from public view, leaving supporters emotionally drained, anxious, and frustrated. In cafes, bars, and apartments, New Yorkers sat glued to televisions, increasingly agitated. Social media exploded with claims of fraud, voter suppression, and conspiracy theories. Polarization intensified as each side questioned the legitimacy of the unfolding results. The following morning, exhausted voters awoke to the stark reality that the city remained without clarity. Newspapers headlined boldly, "Too close to call, New York divided." Editorials called for calm, but few felt reassured. Public frustration boiled over into spontaneous demonstrations. Protesters gathered in front of City Hall, waving signs demanding transparency. Arguments erupted openly in subway cars, streets, and public spaces, prompting police patrols to increase citywide. New York's uncertain mayoral outcome quickly became a national story. Networks nationwide debated endlessly about what the election meant for American politics, highlighting New York City as a potent symbol of deep national division. Days passed without resolution, further recounts producing only tighter results. Both Cuomo and Malliotakis teams filed legal challenges, each accusing the other of attempting to undermine democracy. Lawyers from both sides appeared frequently on television, sparring bitterly and publicly. A prominent federal judge intervened, ordering both campaigns to refrain from incendiary public comments. Still, tensions simmered dangerously. Voters worn down by endless controversy expressed exhaustion and disillusionment. During this turmoil, prominent New Yorkers offered calls for unity. Civic leaders, celebrities, and respected activists urged patience, warning the city could not endure further division without lasting damage. Yet, many wondered privately if the damage had already been done. Trust between citizens fractured deeply, emotions raw and unresolved. On social media, conspiracy theories spread unchecked. Groups emerged to challenge results, alleging corruption and manipulation from both camps. Fake news proliferated, deepening divides and fueling suspicion among neighbors who once trusted one another implicitly. In neighborhoods traditionally loyal to Cuomo, voters openly debated abandoning the Democratic Party entirely. Many felt betrayed by the constant scandals, corruption allegations, and personal attacks that defined Cuomo's comeback. Meanwhile, supporters of Malliotakis questioned whether their uncompromising candidate had inadvertently deepened divides rather than bridging them. Her blunt tactics, though admired initially, now seemed problematic as the city struggled to heal from an electoral battle without resolution. In this bitterly divided atmosphere, New Yorkers wrestled with larger, uncomfortable questions. Had the electoral process itself become so damaged that choosing leadership was no longer possible without bitter conflict? Could any candidate truly unify a city so deeply fractured, no clear answers emerged, weeks after election night, as recounts continued without definitive results? The city's fate remained suspended in limbo. Neither Cuomo nor Malliotakis relented. Each insisted on victory, refusing compromise or concession. New Yorkers, fatigued by endless debate, found themselves trapped in political paralysis, unable to reconcile competing visions or restore unity. The city's divisions, so starkly exposed during this fierce campaign, remained unhealed, perhaps permanently, in diners, parks, and coffee shops across the city. Quiet conversations turned reflective, uncertain, tinged with regret. Citizens who once celebrated their diversity began wondering whether their differences had finally become irreconcilable. As the city waited anxiously, locked in stalemate, a single realization became painfully clear. This election had exposed a fracture running far deeper than two candidates, one rooted in fundamental distrust, disappointment, and unresolved anger for New York City. The outcome was uncertain, but the message undeniable. Choosing a leader had never been harder. Healing would be even more difficult. Perhaps, ultimately, no matter who emerged victorious, the wounds inflicted by this bitter contest might remain forever. The city now waited, deeply divided, fearful, yet quietly hoping against all odds that somehow unity could return. Only time would reveal whether such hope was justified, or whether the damage inflicted by this historic election was simply too profound to repair.